Bonjour Tony Estanguet.
Bonjour.
Hello, Tony Estanguet. I'm delighted to be with you here today. Delighted to have you with us for our spotlight. It's going to be a 30-minute session where we're actually going to be talking with each other, and then there will be a question-answer session with all those who are in the room. But I think you can put your headsets on to make sure that you can hear. So you're the triple champion, Olympic champion for her canoeing and slaloming. You're the first French athlete to have got 3 gold medals in Sydney in 2000, in Athens in 2004, and in London in 2012. And since 2017, you are the chair of the organization of Paris 2024 for the Olympics and Paralympic Games. The Olympics are going to start in 258 days. I presume that you don't have much spare time. So what's the most stressful part of all of this, the Olympics or the Paralympics? Well, that's one of the most difficult questions to answer. To be absolutely answer your question, you said, what's more difficult, organizing the Olympics or being an Olympian? Well, let me just say that when I was an Olympian, it really was a personal goal that I was achieving. I worked every day, I trained every day, and I really thought this was the hardest thing I could possibly do. But now that I've got to deal with the new Olympic Games in France, it's also pretty amazing. It's a lot of hard work. The stress is quite intense at times, and sometimes it's more than in other times. But obviously, if you've been a high-level athlete, I think it's absolutely wonderful to be able to contribute to the biggest sporting event in my country. It's a wonderful challenge for me personally and professionally. But also, I'm discovering something really exciting and new because I realize that our country can organize these major events very successfully. So I'm thrilled about it. Now, you have said being a high-level athlete is what gave you perhaps the skills, the assets that you needed to carry out today's job. So what sort of skills do you think that you got from sport which you use today? Well, there are lots of things that I've got from my past as an athlete. I know how to focus, how to be ambitious. In life, obviously, it's you've got to be very fortunate if you can actually fulfill your ambitions. Fixing ambitions and being able to fulfill them is something which is pretty interesting and amazing. You've got to have a method. You've got to be focused, as I said earlier on. You've got to know how to plan things. And also, it's a team sport. And whether you're in a team sport or in an individual athlete, you've got to actually work with others when you're training. Yes, you were on your own in canoe, but you were used to just winning on your own. Yes, that's true. You're alone in your canoe in the start of the race, but then you've trained for months with others. You've got to listen to your trainer or trainers. You've got to be aware of what's going on elsewhere. You've got lots of preparatory work. And I think all of that means that you've got to be fairly flexible and adaptable. And also things never pan out as you plan. You've always got to be ready to adapt. And so when you're planning something, particularly the Olympic Games as I'm doing now, you've got to be flexible. You've got to be capable of adapting to all new things. And these are the new duties that I have. Now, what about the Olympic Games? There are some 64 construction sites that are underway. There are lots of issues concerning employment. Yes, 258 days. That's the countdown. For days and months we've been working on this. There are going to be 817 competitions. There are going to be 15,000 athletes from 40 different countries. So it's one of the biggest events ever organized by France. Whether we're talking about the infrastructure, the time, the finance, it's massive. Obviously, when you're planning the Olympics or Paralympics, in fact, 96% comes from private funding. So you've got to actually fundraise, and 95% of that has been covered for so far. And then there are many jobs, thousands of jobs, 180,000 jobs that are going to be generated afterwards. So you know that there are lots of private companies that are involved as well. So we're dealing with all sorts of things, obviously, all the peripheral things such as safety, catering, transport, but you've also got sport, which is at the heart of it. And throughout 2024, our country is going to be marked by the sport and thousands of new jobs. Now, is there a challenge that was not planned for and that you've suddenly come across ever since you started working on the committee for the past 7 years? Anything new or unexpected? Well, what I think is amazing with sport and the magic of sport, even those who are working on a daily basis with sports or Olympic Games, you can see that they are deeply attached. I'm obviously not objective because I myself was an athlete. I achieved my goals. I got medals. I was part of the Olympics, and it was all amazing for me. But now I can understand the sort of questions that people are raising. People are fascinated, but of course there's criticism because when people are emotional or passionate about things, it can go one way or the other. And that's what I'm fascinated about. For a long time now, we really are at the heart of topical news, of current affairs. This is going to be actually ruling everybody's minds for at least a year. When we started selling tickets, 7 million tickets were sold instantly. When we put up a platform for volunteers, we got something like 312,000 volunteers sending in their CVs from many different countries, hundreds of different countries. Your organization committee has set a goal, and that is to also fit in with the development goals of the United Nations. And you've fixed a very ambitious goal, that is that carbon emissions should be reduced by 50% compared to London and Rio. Now, how are you going to do that? Well, that is really one of the major challenges that we have set ourselves. And I think for 2024, for Paris 2024, what we want to do is show that in the future, the Olympic Games have to be better adapted to the challenges of our society. So we've got to stay extremely ambitious because we've got to be full of dreams and hopes. I was 10 years old when I first saw the Olympics on television, and that's what gave me my impetus and my great passion. And I think this is why we have to keep that, so that sport should be event that we celebrate. It should be a celebration. But that's not all. And we have to make sure that we can be a little more responsible. So one of the challenges was that we wanted to be organizing this in the most sober manner possible. We changed our model completely. We are no longer using the games to construct infrastructure. The games have to be fitted into their environment and use existing infrastructure. 95% of the infrastructure that's going to be used exists already. This means that we are cutting down on our carbon emissions because they come from construction, obviously. So given the fact that we're using 95% of existing infrastructure, this means that our imprint is much smaller. Then there's transport, where people are going to fly over. Yes, obviously, but we've got to offset those emissions. If we could use trains, for example, if all the French or the Europeans can use trains to get here, that would be much better. And also, locally, all the competition sites will have public transport systems that will allow you to go there and come back from there. That's our promise. That's the promise that we've made. Now, concerning energy, 100% of the electricity that will be of renewable sources. That is really important. All the competition sites will be hooked up to the central system. We will not have temporary generators, which actually use use diesel. And so this is also something which is going to be new, but will be something which will last, because once the games are over, the stadia and the sports centers will be able to use them. Now, there are going to be 13,000 meals that are going to be served. So how do we increase the plant sources in this? Again, how to reduce the carbon imprint of the plates or the dishes. There will be less meat served. So we have to find these sort of solutions to reduce our carbon emissions by half. Another goal is obviously reducing inequalities, gender inequality. So do you think this is going to be achieved? Is your committee fully has got full parity? Yes, our committee has more than 2,000 employees, and there is gender parity. But for the first time, we will have the same number of male and female athletes for the Olympic Games. We have worked with the International Committee, with the national federations that are responsible for the qualification of the athletes who are going to participate, and we have made sure that there is exactly the same number of male and female athletes. So it's the first time in history that in the Olympic Games there will be as many men and women. It's the first time that the Olympic Games will have this parity in Paris in 2022. I think it's a great message that we're sending out, and I think it's very important, because in the last century things have improved and more women can participate, but for the first time that we have an equal balance is in Paris. Now, you have worked with AFD, which is the French development agency, the third incubator, which is called Impact 2024. Now, this is something that you're very involved with, and your team really wanted us to talk about this. So what exactly is happening in that incubator, and what are your projects? Well, let me just explain a little bit the background about this. When 2024 was, when we knew that Paris was going to win the Games, we knew that we had three challenges. The first one was get people to be full of the magic of these games. It's got to be spectacular, and so we had to have wonderful events taking place in the heart of Paris, at the Eiffel Tower, on the Seine, at the Versailles Palace, get people to not only see the games and the sport, but also see the magic of Paris. And that was something that we were very keen about. Secondly, that's the second challenge. How do we use the sport to actually enhance everything that sport has contributed to our society? For example, 50 million euros have been contributed by Paris 2024 to support projects in France and abroad that are carried out by associations that may actually not be that close to sports or athleticism or games, but actually work on issues such as inclusion. These French associations or groups, yes, some of them are, but not all. But we've worked with clubs, with associations. We're working with 30 minutes of sport per day in every primary school in France. And this is to actually get people to be less sedentary. And so we are working with associations that is actually making us show how important sport is worldwide. And one project that I'm really keen on is one that is called Terrain d'Avenir, which is fields of the future. That is to work with refugees. These refugees who are in France, help them to actually fit into our society. And we are helping different associations that are working with the refugees. For example, the Foundation of Refugees, which is one of the associations. And therefore, we can target these people and include them. There's another association called Le Sourire d'un Enfant, Smile of a Child. It's based in Senegal, and this is for young children or minors who may have been actually put in prison, and child offenders. And these are the young people that we are trying to reach out to. And you don't necessarily have to speak the same language every time. You don't have to necessarily have great knowledge. But if you have sport or games, it enables people to immediately connect, to have fun, to feel at ease. Now, I have another question that I'd like to ask you, which I'm interested in. I'm from Africa, and I'm in charge, editor-in-chief of Brut Africa. And I know that there are many African athletes who will be present in Paris 2024. When we're talking about the Olympic Games nowadays in Africa, people say, of course, sport is just not sport or a game. Sport is much more. It enhances peace, and we are, after all, at the Paris Peace Forum, so it's relevant to talk about this. But do you think the Olympic Games of 2024 will be a way of confirming and strengthening the ties between France, the host country, and the African countries, where there seems to be an anti-French feeling? There's some countries that are going through all sorts of crises. Do you think, therefore, through sport, we'll be able to build a better connection? Well, I think what you've said is absolutely right. Sport is a way of contributing to climate change, to all sorts of things. It's a way of including people. It also enhances acceptance and tolerance. I'm not obviously objective because I really believe in this wholeheartedly, but I really think that sport is very good for health purposes, for all young people, but also older people. So when this is actually taking place, I think it's also important for France. For 100 years, we've not actually had a chance to organize the Olympic Games. Yes, it's something to do with your image, yes, but also to look at what we can do and whether we can improve upon it.
We are able to welcome the whole world, and I think this will be historical. France has always been a place welcoming people. We are the human rights country. We gave momentum to the creation of European institutions. We've been present when important moments were at play. So how can we listen to all the expectations, the concerns, and also improve some relationships that are tense? So let's not think that the Games will be a way to change everything, that it will work its magic and that everything will change for it. But I do think that these very key moments are essential because with sport you get to send a very strong signaling. There will be a lot of African athletes and spectators. How will it work for their visas? Has the Olympic Committee planned something specific for this? You are going to be welcoming people from all over the world. You'll have African volunteers as well. Is there something in particular that has been set or not? Well, actually, the French authorities have been working on it for a number of years, so that a system makes it easier for everyone coming from all over the world to come to Paris. We'll be very proud to welcome the athletes, and this is what we are working on at the committee. So we're very proud to be able to welcome the African athletes and from the rest of the world. But the French authorities and the Ministry for the Foreign Affairs are working to make sure that it will be easy to welcome these African athletes. Well, I do have one question that you might have heard a number of times, but the Olympics are a crucial time for you, for athletes. In all the games you've participated in, what is your best, your most fond memory? Well, it is a very hard question, especially when you've won 3 times to single out one edition of the games. But a very core memory would be my very first games back in Sydney. When I was 10, I was watching the games on TV, and it seemed so wonderful wonderful, but also out of access. I knew no one who had been to the Olympics. And 12 years later, when I was at my first games in Sydney during the opening ceremony, and when I realized what it meant, 10 to 11,000 athletes walking together, over 200 countries, Cathay Freeman lighting up the Olympic flame for this very strong message about the relationship between Australia and the Aboriginal people. I was experiencing something that was beyond anything I could have expected. Is it when you actually realized what the Olympic Games were, what they meant? Well, yes, absolutely. I was already a high-level athlete. I was already a world champion. I had attended a lot of competitions and meetings, but I understood that the Olympics were something really specific. And I still believe in the project that is behind it. I think that we do need for countries to be able to convene and to work together on the Games. I've witnessed the impacts, the effects of the Games in Australia, in the countries where I took part in the Games. And I could see for myself the effects it has. So I think there is an actual need for to develop them because they can also work towards the SDGs, the UN SDGs. I think it has a key role to play to help society working on climate change, gender inequality, and in sports. Everyone is on an equal footing, no matter your color, your age, your sexual orientation. You will be included, and what actually matters are skills, are personalities, and abilities as well, which is why I think we need to protect these very specific moments. In Sydney, could you have seen yourself working on the Olympics and organizing them? Well, until the end of my professional career, that was impossible because France applied 5 times to get the Games in Paris before succeeding in getting them. But I was there when France decided to apply again, and I decided to start working for the Paris 2024 right after my professional career. That was the best possible future for me. Well, this is not something I experienced for myself, but this is something that was really striking. The Barcelona 1992 with the Dream Team, we have a very good French athlete working wonders in the ABA, Victor Wembanyama. This is a question for me because I do love basketball. Will Wembanyama be a Jordan-like player for the French team? Well, yeah, absolutely, yes. I am really impressed by what Wembanyama is doing. He's already a star both in France and abroad. The first games he's played in the ABA are already very impressive, and we need role models. We need these major athletes that draw attention and fascination. When I was 10, it was Carl Lewis in the Seoul Games. In 1992, I had a Michael Jordan poster in my room. So I think that globally we need these major sports legends. As French citizens, we're very proud of what Victor Wembanyama is displaying, of his values. He's down on earth. He's very dedicated to his sports, very serious at training. A lot will be happening in the coming years, of course, but for Paris 2024, he will be highly representing France. That was a very personal question. I wanted to ask this question. Do we have questions from the audience? We have a microphone going around. You have someone over here helping you. If you want to ask a question, please do introduce yourself and then go ahead. Thank you. No questions? Yeah?
Bonjour.
Good morning. I'm Béatrice Néré from the Gates Foundation. Thank you very much for this conversation. You've tackled what the Olympic Games are doing in regards of very important issues such as gender inequality, carbon emissions, climate change, so on and so forth. How do you think that you'll be able to mobilize even more broadly, but also to ensure that people who are benefiting from the games and sports in general can meet these community, and those who are trying to make sports at the heart of everything year after year? I think this is not such an easy thing to do, but I think we can deem ourselves very lucky to have you to deal with this. Well, thank you very much for your question, and you're absolutely right in saying that the games happen every 4 years, and we will have the 33rd games on our soil, and we talk about a lot of the repercussions of the games. So what we're trying to do is to make sure that we're mobilized for the impact to be immaterial. For decades, we used the games to have a material and very practical effect on the cities that hosted the games. For example, in Barcelona, the city was transformed after the game, and there is a power of a transformative power that is at play. And for a number of years, it was only focused on this. And now we want to show that there could be intangible heritage after the games that will be able to work better, to work with NGOs, with people who work on sports, with sports on a daily basis. And if, as athletes, we are here, we are able to do what we do, it is thanks to a lot of people working in sports who are involved to make sure that children and people are able to train, to run, and to do sports. Our volunteers, how do we show them, how do we make them visible during the opening ceremony, during the games, to make sure that they know how grateful we are for what they do. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in what we're doing, because if we want to foster best practices, if we want to make sure we benefit from all this work, we need to make sure that we'll be able to value best practices. We want to listen to any suggestions that you'd like to make. How do we bridge the gap between organizations? And I'm delighted to be here today because, let me say very humbly, because I don't want to seem for it to sound like I'm not, but we need to be aware of how important sports are. Good morning. We know that in Kosovo and Serbia, in the Middle East and in Ukraine and Russia, this could disturb the games. We know that geopolitics and political events have a lot to do with the games. So how will you manage the conflicts happening at the moment that could impact the athletes taking part in the games? That's actually a very relevant question. Thank you, Mr. Pascal Boniface, for your question. I'm very struck by everything that is happening at the moment, and unfortunately, we are not happy with what is going on. We are fighting against what is happening at the moment when we believe in sports and in the values it conveys. Conflicts have been at play forever in the world. We know it will still be the case in 2024, but I think that the role we have to play in this is that we need to fight even more, even stronger for these moments where everyone convenes. Sports and politics are at a crossroads because we need the authorities to take responsibility to raise awareness about how important sports are. But I do think that the industry of sports needs to be independent. Sports and the sports industry need to be very clear as to what their values are, to advocate for them. And what we want to do is to celebrate peace, to show what sports how sports can contribute to society. When I traveled for the games in China, we were talking about boycotting the games, and there have been boycotts in the past. But I do think that sports should be played globally everywhere in the world. And no matter what is happening in the countries, no matter how big the countries are, everyone should have access to sports. We should be able to help young people to be able to do sports, and I think that we should inspire them. 4 billion people watch the games on TV. This is the largest event in the world. There will be conflicts during the games, but I think that what we have to do is to make sure that we promote and that we advocate for our values. We want to offer an unprecedented experience to these athletes without any form of discrimination, no matter where they come from, no matter their sexual orientation. We want to value them. We want to shed the light on them. And we know that someone behind the screen will be moved by all of this. So it's not a case of saying that we don't pay attention to what is going on globally, but I think we do have a role to play in defending and advocating for what is happening during the games, showing that there is room for a better world and that sports have a role to play in this. Thank you. My name is Noël Tadignan. I come from Togo. Togo, who has actually just been qualified for rowing for the very first time. France is working to help athletes who have been qualified, but I don't have information as to support system for female athletes who want to come from Africa. My second question is about volunteers. Is there a quota for African volunteers? Well, thank you for both of your questions. Let me reassure you on both points. What we want to do is to protect the universal aspects of the Games. I think the main strength of this event is how universal it is. For the first time in the Games, when we open the tickets sales, there was one single platform that opened simultaneously all throughout the world. We wanted to make sure that everyone could get a ticket no matter where they live. And this is a success because people have been able to buy tickets in 160 countries in the world. This is actually an issue because a lot of people want to attend and there are not enough tickets for everyone. But I think the system we've implemented was a way to make sure that some African supporters were able to buy tickets for all sports for the Paris 2024 Games. And I think same goes for volunteers. We've called for volunteers globally, and we've got applications from 158 countries. We've worked with Sophie Laurent to make sure that we would get volunteers from the entire world. This is something we're very proud about. We'll have volunteers working with the delegations. This has happened in the past and will happen in France as well.
Bonjour Tony, Sébastien, Pyrénéen.
We have one last question. Hi Tony, I'm Sébastien from Pau. I am the founder of L'eau neuve, the new water. You have a bottle of it. I have a question. Sports in general have always called for funding and have mainly been funded by major cigarette or fast food or sodas brands. Will the 2024 games will start to show some ethics and be able to refuse funding from companies who do not reflect the values of sport and have a say in the choice of the brands, with more ethical companies who are healthier, basically? This is also a very relevant question that we have to ask ourselves for the future, because what is at stake here is our ethics for the future of sports. What I do think about this is the project in and of itself. What do we do with the funding, and what will be the heritage of the games? How can we show that there will be a rupture and a disruption before and after the games? Our organization is supported by companies who give us two things: their know-how and their fundings for us to be able to organize the games. Their know-how is essential because if we want to be able to have a new system for the games, if we want to be able to show that they are more responsible, that they have a different kind of impact, it calls for new solutions. When we want for twice as much meals to be plant-based, we need to find solutions to make sure this happens. For the 15,000 athletes who are attending, we want to make sure that they are appropriately fed and that they are able to take part in the competition in the best possible condition. But we want also to be able to cut carbon emissions. When we talk about transport, about energy, we want only to have power from renewable sources. We need to find practical solutions for this. We're working with Enedis, because the French provider, because television sets need to get their power. We want to make sure there will be no power cuts during the games. So French companies have been working on new systems, new solutions, to show that they're able to work on innovations and to find new kinds of solution. So to answer your questions, we want to be able to value the companies who want to change society, to help adapt our behaviors. So we are listening to all suggestions because we want to be able to value these solutions during the games. So we need to be on the lookout for these solutions, to listen to the companies who suggest them, and we need maybe to be more available for companies who have not been aware of these questions, but to get them on board with us and to let them know that if they want to benefit from the visibility of the games, if they want to benefit from all the great things coming from the games, they need to change their models and to try and implement that change. So if we want to transition out of a fossil fuel-based society, we need to work on these solutions. So this huge shared challenge for society needs to be addressed with the whole of society and with all stakeholders on board. So we need to have a meaningful project, but also to make sure that we find partners who are ready to be involved for technical and financial solutions. We have one last question at the back. No? You've changed your mind? Okay. Do we have one last question from the audience?
Je pense qu'on est bon.
Well, I think we will wrap up then. Thank you very much. What would you like us to wish you for these 2024 Paris Games? Well, for this to be a common success for everyone, I think that France has all it takes to organize wonderful games, but also meaningful games. This is what has been driving us so far. Paris 2024 is working hand in hand with actors who are actually making a commitment to change the model and who are able to value what sports has to offer, and that will be made more visible during this large global event. Thank you very much.